This podcast is being recorded on the traditional land of the Blackfoot Confederacy. This consists of the Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, and the Blackfeet in the U.S. We acknowledge the Stoney Nakoda, which consists of the Bearspaw, Morley, and Chiniki. We acknowledge the Tsuut'ina, who are Dene, and the Métis, Inuit, status and non-status from all of Turtle Island, and those who are visiting. We are all treaty people.
Welcome to the Dave Leary Show.
Welcome to the Voices in Recovery podcast, brought to you by Freedom's Path Recovery Society in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Thank you for tuning in. Please remember that these are opinions that are shared are those of the individuals and not of any agency, organization, or other entity, unless otherwise specified. Also, if you're a minor, please check with your parent and or guardian, as you need to have permission to listen to these podcasts. We will potentially talk about violent subject matter, sexual content, and difficulties human beings face on their day-to-day lives in recovery. Today's guest, luckily Darcy's not too hard on me.
Yeah.
He has the whip in the car though.
Yeah, exactly.
Today's guest is Tara Ernst, the new president
Yep.
of Beyond the Blue.
Yes.
Right on.
Yeah.
So how we do this, you just tell us whatever you want to tell us.
Okay.
So you have as much time as you want.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I'm just really excited to hear, not just because of the climate right now, but in general, because I've encountered your program a couple of times through the last 5 years, and every time I do, I really am encouraged by what you folks are representing, and the stability that it adds to probably the police family on its own, right? That stability of having the people behind you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, man, I'm excited. We got to come out here to Glenifer Lake,
Yeah.
Alberta, and meet with you. So thank you for having us.
Oh, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. So I mean, the story behind Beyond the Blue is, I'll back up right to when my husband and I first met, and he was working kind of just random jobs, but he knew he wanted to be a police officer. That was kind of his thing, and we. So I knew that if my life was going to go down that way, that was going to be my role. I was going to be a police spouse, and it never scared me. It was just, okay, this is what it is, and I'm the type of person that I like to have tools in my toolbox. Almost,
Yeah.
I would say. I've always self-help books, and I've read every one of them. It's ridiculous, and so I've always kind of had that arsenal that I was going to make the best of this, and I was going to do what we could. And I mean, I'm not naive to think that every person that walks into this career, they know the numbers, whether we're not even sure where the numbers for divorce came from.
Yeah.
But I think we've all heard 85 to 87%.
Oh, yeah. I think
And
we have.
so you kind of look at that and you go, okay, well, we're going to be the other side. And that was what we decided immediately. And so fast forward to when my husband got onto the job. Obviously, is a super exciting time. He proposed to me when he knew he had that stability. So for him, when he got on the job, that's when he proposed. And so one of the things that we really wanted, and at the time, I really speak to the chaplaincy program that was at the time, and the value of that you guys bring to the CPS. And so at the time, it was paid chaplains that were police officers. And so we had reached out to them and said, we would like to do marriage prep through you guys. We had both grown up going to church and all of that kind of stuff, but we kind of wanted some advice coming from within. And so there, at the time, it was Kevin McInnes and Jim Emsing, and they sat down with us, I think it was once every couple weeks for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And we got really fantastic advice. That really set our marriage up for success right from the beginning, I believe. And I really valued that. And so at the time as well, Kevin McInnes's wife was putting on she decided she wanted to put on Police Spouses Retreat in Kananaskis. And so I'm new in this world, but I was like, I'd love to help. So I was on the board that started this, or we did this retreat in October of 2013. And from there, that's where kind of Beyond the Blue was started. There was a bunch of us that were with CPS, and we kind of said, this needs to be a more consistent thing. We really need to support the spouses and the families within the Calgary Police. And so that's what we did. We started Beyond the Blue and Calgary Beyond the Blue, and that was in 2014 is kind of when we, I guess, launched. And that started kind of the years of building. And at that time, we were lucky enough to receive, we had proposed to the CPA, the Calgary Police Association, and the CPS, and they both gave us money to start up. And we really, one of the big things that we didn't want to be, because we had heard that, people have tried to do this before, and it just became I don't want to say a bitch fest, or somewhere where the wives come in and they just complain about everything on there. And so right away, that was a foundation that we did not want to be known as. And with the backing of CPS and CPA, we really knew that we had to kind of keep an eye on that and really promote that life is done better in community, and having a community of spouse or of police families is where we're going to be best served. So at the beginning, we started a Facebook group that's, for the most part, that's been a big part of just, I think, the community piece. Yeah. Just knowing that, I'm not alone in this. Husband's going to be late for dinner again, bad guy got him instead or something. And everybody on there is like, I get it. Because to be honest, I had trouble with my own family, not understanding the career and the challenges. I'd show up, I had 3 kids within 4 years, and I had lots, and so here I am showing up at family events by myself with 3 young kids, and, me telling them that Graham's sleeping, and they're like, well, I don't think he's pulling his weight, and all of that kind of stuff. So I know the impact that it's hard for anybody outside of the police world to fully understand it, and that's okay.
It might be impossible to understand it unless you're in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. But with that, you need people that do understand that. Yes. So that you don't feel like, maybe there is something wrong, right? And so, part of the growth of Beyond the Blue, I think that, all these years we've done a great job. We occasionally will run education programs, bring in speakers. We've done a big conference before. But now when we're looking forward with Beyond the Blue, we're really looking at 3 pillars. Community, education, and resources are our big pillars that we want to provide for families, because again, I think I've always said that I actually believe that spouses have a lot of influence in their spouse's career.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying, I don't like the word power, I don't like control or anything like that, but I believe, and I've seen it in my own relationship, the impact that if you can be a safe place that they can come home to, and that they want to come home to, then it impacts their, emotional stability. It impacts their, their ability to go for promotion and all of these things that come with their career. If you can be the safe place that they can come home to, you're gonna, as a family, you're gonna do really well.
No doubt.
And I really think that this world of police families, there's a lot of great little blessings too, and they take 4 days off and we get 12. Yeah. If you can look at the positives, then that helps, right? Yeah. And so I think your attitude and your ability to come into it knowing that you're going to have to learn how to be adaptable, because there are things that are going to come up,
Yeah.
and you have to know that it's not them. They would love to be able to come home to you in a lot of ways. And again, I'm not naive to think that there's issues in relationships, and I think a lot of the divorces that happen, there's communication struggles from day one, and they're just amplified in this career, right? And that's every career, every job has their issues and all
But
of
this
that
job
kind of stuff
has some
too.
specific issues that other jobs don't.
Absolutely. And you know, for example, when the kids are young, it's great. You don't have to go to the zoo on weekends because we all know cops don't like crowds, and all of that kind of stuff. So there is flexibility, and now when it comes to the kids getting older and going to school, that presents its own challenges. And for us, when our son was in grade 1, he started saying, Dad, are you on days off this weekend? And there's usually a chunk of 4 to 6 weeks that they're working every weekend. And so our son would be like, oh, you're never on days off when I'm on days off. And that was heartbreaking. And so for us as a family, we really decided that to do this life well, you need to be intentional. And intentionality is, I don't think it's a normal thing in society anymore.
I don't think
we
it
just
is either.
do what everybody else is doing. So your kids are in 50 sports. Oh, well, I got to keep up with that. And but I think I've seen it in my own family that, you know, when your kids become your life and you overexert yourself, then divorce could happen whether you're a police family or not. And I think that, so that for us became a very big thing, that we were always intentional. So I mean, we ended up homeschooling, which again, we know through COVID, not everybody wants to, people choose that. They're not, if it's not your choice, that's a really hard decision, right? But that was what we did for our family, so that we could go skiing on the week or during the weekdays and in the winter, and we could come out to the cabin and spend time, right? And I know that that's not realistic for everybody, but I think being intentional still is a huge part of that. So one of the things, you know, Beyond the Blue has done from the beginning, and probably where we've gotten most of our, you know, current members, is we go to every recruit class family night.
Oh, okay.
Because we want to get them right from the beginning. Because if we're going to make impact and change in a relationship, it's going to be, you know, because the police world, the first 5 years is the honeymoon period. And then after 5 years, everybody's an asshole, and you know,
all your bosses
everything
are
is bullshit, and right, like, and it's like, we can see it, and you know, my husband and I laugh now because the new people that come onto his team, and about year 5, we're like, oh yeah, okay, this is pretty standard. So, you know, we really look at trying to get them started with people right away, and knowing that they're not alone right away. Now would I love to have some of the people that have made it through and been around, those are the people that we're trying to figure out how to reach. Because obviously, you know, showing up to recruit class night is great. We do all of the family events, and we have a table, and we show up, and we're trying to do our best, but we want to reach everybody. And the growth has been incredible. I mean, we have over 530 members currently, which is, I mean, when you look at a police service of 1,500 about, we're doing pretty good.
It's really good.
But I know there's people out there that probably are doing this alone, and that it makes me a little bit sad, because I think it's a hard life in that sense. What else? I mean,
what do you think some of the pitfalls are for new members and their families? Like, what are some of the major pitfalls that, just from your experience?
I think fear. Again, I think even though I believe we have the best service across Canada, I truly 100% believe that CPS is miles ahead of where a lot of the other ones are. in terms of just resources and all of that kind of stuff.
And support.
It's crazy. I think media, right? Like, unfortunately, I mean, especially right now, but we all see it. I mean, you read the newspaper, and it's easy to get caught into the comments, right? Looking at a story, whether it's true or not, or fully true. I mean, there's always some truth. And then going through the comments and feeling that, like, desire to want to defend your spouse.
Yeah, of course.
And so I think fear is one of them. I think, you know, a lot of people come into this and it's not their first career.
Yeah.
It's your second and third. And so as a spouse or family who are used to them being home, you know, every night, the change of that is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel fortunate that I knew going into this life with my husband that that's the route we were going.
Yeah.
But not everybody kind of has that, and I think that offers a challenge in itself. I think shift work always does.
Such a killer. Yeah.
With sleep, right? I mean, we all know how we act with less sleep. We're a little more irritable. Like, think of that over time.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I always said with my husband, and I know he knows he's a lucky one, is that I valued his sleep. And whether that meant that I had to do more with the kids, whether that meant I had to, you know, change schedules around or not, I tried not to ever wake him up, because I knew that if he had good sleep, I had happy Graham or happy, right, for 3 good days, rather than setting him off right away.
Yeah.
And again, that's a challenge for some people. That's a really, that's a choice. That's a choice that I think that is not an easy one to make. And sometimes you're annoyed that they're sleeping and you're dealing with kids for, you know, 4 days when they're working because they're not very helpful during those days.
Yeah.
But again, I think a lot of being a police spouse comes down to choice and attitude. And choosing to kind of look at your spouse and go, this is the career he chose.
Yeah.
So which means that's my path too. And how are we going to make this the best for all of us?
So it's more like a partnership. It becomes like a partnership, which becomes more effective.
100%. Yeah.
Do you think it comes back to, like, when people maybe just feel badly, like the spouse or the partner feels badly because they're not seeing their partner? Do you think that's sometimes why they interrupt their sleep and do stuff, is because they're lonely for them, and maybe their expectation of them being on the job? Like, to me, everything always comes back to our expectations.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Yeah, so it feels like if you go into that expecting it to be a normal job, you're going to be really frustrated.
You're going to be disappointed and absolutely frustrated.
Yeah, and so the fact that there's a group of families that are supporting the members, I just hope all of the families of members gradually come and gather with you guys, because that's where the community then becomes like healing and supportive, right? And when everyone knows the expectations, and maybe we get faced with, well, our expectations might be a little unreasonable, right?
Absolutely.
Unreasonable to expect a guy to work 12-hour night shifts and then to mow the lawn all day and do yard work in between.
And be a fully functioning human being.
Yeah.
And be happy to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. We talk about expectations are the killer of most relationships in general, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's friendships, whether that's family. I think that is a huge thing in itself. And coming in here and going, okay, well, on Mother's Day or on my birthday or on Christmas even, like, they're going to take that time off and they're going to be home. Like, hopefully you can have conversations around that.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, that's part of being that adaptable and flexible and learning that, right? If Christmas is super important to you, then that needs to be relayed so that, okay, you're home on those days and you take time off. Maybe that's a holiday, but you know, you have to have those conversations. And I think that's where the pitfall is that, well, I just expect you to take that off. And they're going, but it's triple time, right?
Exactly. I was just thinking that. I'm like, how could you expect someone to take that off?
For me, I'm like, work every holiday, right? Like, you know, we can make up days whenever.
We'll
here
do
and
Christmas
there.
on the 28th.
Exactly. Like I, you know, and at CPS, I have to give them credit. Even when Graham has been working on Christmas, he can usually come home for opening presents, or he can come home for dinner, and then, you know, or whatever. Like I feel like, again, a lot of that comes down to bosses and sergeants and all of that kind of stuff. But we've been very fortunate with sergeants that have been very good with that, and which has been great. But yeah, I think you have to have a foundation of, I mean, I think communication, I mean, we can all say that till we're blue in the ear that it's the most important thing, but I think even more so, right? I think, you know, for example, we would usually get in, not fights, but just when he woke up on his first day off, if the house was messy, like, he couldn't settle down until the house was messy. Well, I'm taking it defensively because I've just had the kids for, you know, blah,
4
blah,
days
blah,
or whatever, right?
And I'm getting defensive, when instead we've decided, okay, if we just take the first 20 minutes and just tidy up, then he can come down, and then we can. But that was something that we had to learn over time.
And you had to talk about it.
We had to talk about it, right? I know at the beginning I probably would wake him up and expect him to be at a family function, you know, all bright-eyed and cheery, even if he got good sleep. On that first day, it's tough. They feel like they're hungover all day. Like, so to have conversations, he was probably less likely to have them. And then, then my family is judging that. Do you know what I mean? Like, so now I try not to plan anything on that first day, right? So those are things that you learn over time, and where we want to walk beside people and go, no, this is very normal. That you're, you know, or you're scared on night shifts. At the beginning, for sure. So if that means getting an alarm system, if that means having a communication like, hey, I just needed to touch base at night by text when I go to bed,
something,
whatever, and then you talk to all of us veteran ones, and we're all like, we love night shift.
Because then you don't have to talk to them.
We get to order skip the dishes and watch whatever show we want, you know, like, but that comes with time, and that's where the passing on and the wisdom. We need that.
Absolutely.
Right? We need those people at the beginning to know that they're not crazy for being scared. They're not crazy for, you know, just wondering what's going on.
Yeah, and to let them know that, like, it's important to ask for those times off if you need them.
Absolutely.
Right? Because, and trying to, like, for me to try to explain to someone, look, triple time is a thing. Like, it's a big thing.
Huge.
Right? And for some people, it probably means a vacation or not a vacation.
Yeah.
Right? Or the kind of vacation.
Totally.
Right? And that kind of stuff is very important. So explaining that to new member spouses would be, I could think, essential.
Absolutely.
Because you'd probably cut out a whole bunch of fighting right off the bat by just simply saying, if you just simply let him know, or her, that this is important to us, to the family, then I think you'll probably get a better result.
Absolutely. And it's something as simple as, you know, going to restaurants and you know, we always joke that, you know, your officer needs to sit, you know, with their back so they can see the restaurant, and, you know, like, and I know of spouses that have made a big deal out of that. And I go, I choose to not make a big deal out of it, because they're naturally going to be more hypervigilant all the time. That's part of their job. So.
And are you benefiting if you force him to have his back to the door? Is that a benefit for the meal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you just not just go, well, whatever, it is what it is.
Totally.
Rather than going like, I wish you could just turn it off, you know, when you're on days off. And it's like, unfortunately, that's not realistic for them for what they see, right? And we're lucky. I mean, I don't even know half the stuff they see, right? At the beginning, of course, they tell you every story, but now it's like, oh, you did that? Like, I had no idea. And it's not because they're trying to keep it from you. It's just like, it's just every day.
And
It's their
what are they
reality.
going to do? Come home and tell you every day for the rest of your life? That is not going to be helpful.
I don't want that either.
Yeah, no doubt.
you know, like, we can have conversations that don't always revolve around that. And I think one of the hard things is that because of what they see, and if things aren't great at home, or maybe they've struggled with communication anyways, and the whole PTSD and the occupational stress injuries and the trauma that they see, if they don't have that ability to get rid of that, it affects the whole family unit, right? I mean, it really does. And so when you're looking at, police officers are heroes, and you're going, well, that's nice because he's a-hole at home.
That's right.
And that's a realistic thing, right? And I think that's where it's like, it's easy for me to say it's all about the attitude and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But also knowing that trying to talk to your spouse, if they're in that world, it's a very, very challenging thing.
Yeah.
And that's where the resources and the education come in for us, because I can't claim to know that. I can only do what I can on my end with, relationships with psych services and peer support. And I truly believe peer support needs to be a bigger education piece within the service.
Oh my goodness, that would be wonderful.
Itself, because my husband and I were talking about it the other day. I said, you guys work with each other all day long. You know when somebody is spiraling. Yeah. But everybody's afraid to get in that guy's business. And I said, and that's a problem, because so my husband is also with the CPA. He's a director on the CPA, and it's provided such a neat kind of position for us, and in seeing kind of a different side of the world of policing as well. And even with me being the president now, it's like it's this new kind of position. But the guys that are now coming to the CPA and going, oh my God, I fucked up. Yeah. And but all that may have taken was
somebody saying
somebody going like, I'm willing to walk beside you. Yeah. I'm going to get in this hole with you, and whatever it takes, because I'm concerned about this behavior at work, right? Yeah. And so I mean, peer support, I think, is such a huge part of...
It's massive.
Because we can have all the resources in the world, and if nobody's going to them, or if they're forced to go to them eventually because they've gotten themselves in so trouble. Deep, but what we need is more peers. And so one of the programs that we want to look at as well, and we did this a while ago with Beyond the Blue, we had a peer support team. It wasn't being utilized that much, so right now it's kind of just me, but I'd love to open up peer support again and get as many people as who wants to trained, because I think it just adds value in how you deal with people outside of the police world. Of course. It's knowing what to say or how to walk beside them, and I think in general that could alleviate a lot of these media attention stories that happen.
Well, we would cut them out.
We would cut them out.
Yeah, we
wouldn't be in the news for these big, like, holy, he did that, like, or she did that, like, what were they thinking? Well, they weren't. They were in trauma, like, or they were off their rocker at that time, right?
It's amazing too that the level of unknowing that some of the established people in CPS, the executive mostly. Yeah. I'm gonna try to be very gentle there. Yeah. And gentle not because there's anything particularly wrong with anyone there. I have no idea who's all there, to be honest. It's that it's unknown, right? Yes. Because we don't really know what the executive's up to. Totally. And it'd be nice to figure that out. Yeah. But have the support that doesn't hinge on whether it's been done before, right? The support for the members, because it's got to be new. Yeah. We haven't stumbled across the silver bullet yet. No. For mental health, stability, all that kind of stuff, especially with first responders. Absolutely. Right? Yeah. And veterans as well, but we just haven't got there. Yeah. And so trying to, the peer support is such a hard element. Sorry, I was going down a pathway with this story where I suggested to a member of, this was a couple of years ago, of the executive. I make suggestions to whoever I want because I don't have any bosses except for that thing up there.
Yes, yeah.
Whatever that thing is up there.
Yeah.
But I said, what do you guys do with fatalities?
Yeah.
Traffic fatalities. Like, do you have a decompression? Do you make them go through a debrief? And no. And I said, well, you do realize that a lot of the PTSD that I encounter with some of the members is a direct result of fatalities.
Yeah.
And they said, oh yeah, well, we send an inspector out to ask if they're okay. And I'm like, what would you have said if you were a constable and an inspector comes out? I'm fine, right? We went into this, and then I got like really closed down.
Yeah.
They closed me down big time. And I said, look, you're treating this like I'm asking you to make it me, and I'm not.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting is, because one of my really good friends on the job was in traffic for a few years, and that's where he saw the most fatalities.
Absolutely.
Right? And his heart is broken. And nobody ever, he told me all these stories about, he goes, yeah, Dave, like the inspector comes out, but nobody tells the inspector on scene that I'm having trouble, right?
Totally.
Now, some of the younger guys and girls might, because they know that they have to talk or they're not going to get hurt.
You hope.
You hope, because when they get in there with the older cops who don't talk about their feelings, and we know that still rivers run deep, right? Most of them run very deep.
Absolutely.
And I think we just encountered that up in Edmonton.
Absolutely.
With that a terrible incident, right? With the officer took his life.
Yeah.
And that, for my money, when I go out with the police, and I want to ask you all about your experience, because I'm sure you've done ride-alongs and all that stuff. But one of the things that bothers me the most about the job in general, obviously not the people doing it, it's the job that requires you to be so hyper-vigilant, as you mentioned. But even if nothing happens. So, like by the end of his shift, I remember this one night, I went with these two constables, and they were hard workers, so they were busy all night, right? And by the end of the night, I was like, okay, so what are we going to do now, the three of us, to come down from this night? Because nothing actually happened, but we were amped all night because the calls were potentially, right?
It's always a potential. It's
always
the
a potential.
It's the unknown.
And that's what I brought to these people in the executive and said, well, this person who represented the executive. I won't speak for the executive, like I said, but it was absurd to him. It was absurd to him to have even a 10-minute debrief, remove the officers from the scene after the accident, whatever. And this was just about fatalities. This wasn't about that compounded occupational stress that's felt every day.
Absolutely.
Right? Because what happens, I know you probably talked to your husband, what does he go through when he gets a hot call and then he has to go right down to zero again?
And then go to the next call, right? Like you don't have that ability, right? Like you're expected to now, put it back on, right? And so their armor is always on, and trying to get that stripped away is very difficult.
Oh my goodness! And by the end of a shift, the armor has basically kept all of the feeling in. And you said it earlier as you were talking about his first day off after night shifts is like a hangover. It almost feels like a. I felt it almost every time I went out on a night shift with the guys and girls because I don't do nights. So I feel
hard
awful
enough
anyway.
as is.
By 5 a.m. I am like literally talking gibberish.
Oh,
like,
totally.
Oh yeah.
They usually all
are.
are.
No doubt, but it's so there's just so much bottled up, right? And it makes sense to have like an emotional hangover after cutting off your emotions for 4 days. Right? And how so. But this is a question I'll ask you because I have no answer for it. I ask myself all the time. But like, what is a good way to get rid of that during the shift? Because you and I both know we don't want to make them vulnerable. Right? Because I don't want anybody getting hurt. Because they're too, according to some people, too soft or whatever. But how do we bridge that gap so they're not building up all that stress all day? You've probably thought about this.
I mean, I think it's on shift is a tough one, right? Because like you said, it's that, I know John Griloni has done great work with heart math and I think the military and like some of the stuff in the States really use heart math. And I'm hoping that I love heart math because there is a tangible, they can see it. It's not so like you're going to meditate after, after every call. Like, let's be realistic. That's not going to happen. So
I can tell you from experience that they will not do it.
Absolutely.
They will not. I've suggested it.
Totally. I mean, we all know that it's
Yeah.
the benefits and all of that kind of stuff, but you're dealing with a different crowd. So, I think I think it's one that we need to kind of try to figure out.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, that's where spouses kind of get their, get upset is work gets the best of them.
Yeah.
Because they're hypervigilant all the time. They're happy, like they're amped up a bit.
Yeah.
And then they come home and they're exhausted.
Yeah.
So I think, again, as a family, you definitely need to figure out what that looks like, right?
Yeah.
And work on that. It's not easy, right? It's, as much as you want to be like, okay, let's go for a walk because, exercise is going to help them. Sometimes they really don't want to, right? And so you got to do it not on the day that they're trying to come off of that. You need to have a plan.
Yeah.
You need to go, okay, on your first day off, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And then let's try to get active for an hour. Like our family plays disc golf.
Yeah.
So let's go play disc golf because we're outside in nature, which naturally is going to let them, all of that kind of stuff. But you have to have an idea. And that's where that intentional kind of piece comes from.
What you're saying, having the idea, is there lots of like occasional or regular pushback when there's not a plan and it's kind of sprung?
Well, for sure.
Yeah. So springing it on people who have not had a lot of sleep, have been hypervigilant, probably isn't the best way.
Totally. I think like anything, if you're sprung, you should go for a walk.
Yeah.
They'll go, I've just got off, like I'm exhausted, right? And so, I don't know if you've read the book Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement.
Absolutely.
So
it's all bullshit and assholes.
Exactly. But what he is really trying to promote in all services, and I hoped that the executive and everybody was there because he talks about after shift, letting them go early and force them all to go into the gym for 20 minutes.
22 minutes, right?
22 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a hard movement to start, but I said to my husband, when you become a sergeant, you should try that, right? Because if you're looking at the emotional health of your team and all of that, and not dealing with negative paper and all of the stuff that comes along with a bunch of personalities together, maybe that's something that you can try, right? As an experiment, because I mean his work is incredible, and he was hilarious and right to the point. Like he knew what he was talking about, and so that book, I really recommend people reading it right away.
Yeah.
The hard part is that it's not in the first 5 years that you really even kind of think about that book. Yeah. I think it needs to be read by officers at year 5. I've said, because I know they used to have the course actually.
Did they offer it?
I believe that Mark Kalogi at one point ran a course that was similar, because my husband did it at probably year 6, and he went, that's when you need to hear it, because it's all true at that point, right?
Because you're starting to feel negative. And
exactly, right? Where you know enough, my husband always says, you know enough, but you don't have any pull to do anything differently.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the challenge there.
You've learned the dynamics of that agency.
You feel confident enough, right?
Yeah.
He goes, the first 5 years, you still feel like every call is brand new and you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And anybody that thinks differently, like, needs,
it's
like,
intense out there.
It's
So
intense,
those
and
calls,
every call you go to,
Yeah.
and that's the fun part of the job.
That's right.
Is that there is no consistency and complacency that way, but it wears on you. Realistically, you're dealing, like Dr. Jody Carrington, I don't know if you've seen her. She's a clinical psychologist that's worked a lot with first responders and kids, and she's like, when you're dealing with people that have their lid is flipped, that's who you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You have to try to figure out how to get their lid back on, because they're in fight, flight, or fight,
That's
or
right.
whatever. But if you come into that with a flipped lid as well, and it doesn't go very well, right?
Yeah.
And so it's learning. They're dealing with the, this whole defunding the police. I mean, I think it would be amazing to see better mental health resources and better all of that. But realistically, you can't send a nurse to a call
Where there's violence.
Yeah. She can't go by herself.
Yeah.
So the police still have like such an important role. And what are we expecting from them?
Yeah.
Like, how much knowledge are they supposed to have, right? I mean, I don't even go to my doctor anymore expecting that they know everything, because they don't.
Yeah, obviously don't.
They obviously
Yeah.
don't. And sometimes you have to push for, you know, what you need. And so, I mean, it's an interesting climate right now, that's for sure. And we're definitely feeling it on our page.
Are you?
Yeah, and, it's hard. It's easy, again, to read all the articles and to read everybody on Facebook on, that your friends are talking about all of this kind of stuff. And I've, in our latest newsletter that's going out July 1st, I kind of said, you know what, get off, right? If it's not serving you, if you're more irritable, if you're more like agitated, if you're anxious, all of that kind of stuff, because we started seeing articles being, while police families are being followed home, and it's like, well, okay, we're not the States, thankfully.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are issues down there are more systemic, even just with how they treat the police and what they get paid and all of that we could go into that
Oh
forever.
God, their training, their lack of training.
Everything, right? And I feel for them. So one of the things actually Graham and I got to do a few years ago, when Paris Prasad, he was a chaplain at the time.
He was the chaplain.
They were looking for police spouses to go down to North Carolina to the Billy Graham Center, and because they put on the big law enforcement family retreat down there at the Billy Graham Center. So Graham and I were fortunate enough to go for free. It was incredible to be down there, and that was life-changing for us to be able to look at and go, to realize how lucky we are, because almost every officer that we talked to down there had been shot at, stabbed, like it's a different world. And as much as we're grateful, the climate with how the media and stuff is sometimes right now, it does make me a little fearful.
For sure.
Of where we could become that, right? If that's how, and does that mean that there aren't issues and policies and all of that can be done better? 100%.
Yeah. We
again,
all know that, I think.
But I truly don't believe that anybody, especially in the CPS, are out there to really try to sewer their guys or their police,
Yeah.
There's good bosses, good managers.
Yeah.
And right now, I mean, the chief has been very open to us, which has been great. When he first came on, I reached out to him, and he sat with me in a meeting, and I thought that was incredible that he saw the value in the family unit.
He seems like such a good guy. Like, I don't want to speak too soon, and I don't know what his policies or stuff are, but he just seems like at least he's honest.
Exactly.
He seems that way.
Yeah, and I mean, he's really supported us, and I mean, we just had the counselor, I'm not sure if you saw the tweet that
I didn't.
One of the Calgary counselors posted after everything down south happened. It was basically along the lines of, with all the police violence against people of color, I wouldn't be surprised if all these cops who have so much rage inside go home and beat their spouses. And that's what she wrote on Twitter. And so,
I mean, I'm not saying it's not true, because it's true sometimes.
Sometimes, but that's a pretty blanket statement.
That's an awful statement.
You're also, I mean, you're talking about, it's just a very, so anyway, so I reached out.
That's an awful thing to say.
I reached out to, the chief, and I all of a sudden was on a phone call with her, the CPA president, the senior officers president, the chief, and we all kind of shared the impact of a statement like that can have. Like, you don't understand what that does to the family unit, and which means if the family unit is stressed as well, it means that the officer is more stressed as well, right? And so we gave it to her, and she apologized on Twitter and everything. But that's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with right now, and it is impacting our families. But I'm glad. And the great thing is that we can have a safe place to be able to talk about some of this.
Yeah.
Because we all know on Facebook and Instagram and all of that, if you tried to say something, unfortunately, your voice, it would look poorly right now, right? And so at least they have a place that they can vent that and feel that relief.
Safe.
And that safe place. So
I can't imagine what it's like and I mean, we could talk about it probably all day, what's going on now, right? Like, because it affects the families and the officers so much. Has there been any times where your husband's been like, you know what, I'm just not going to work because of what's happening?
You know, he's pretty good. He said, you know, for the first 2 weeks, probably with all the protests and stuff, and there was just a heaviness, right? Like they came home and you're just kind of exhausted. But again, like a lot of things in media and all of that, like there's a big period of it and then it kind of dwindles down, and so now it's just like back to work like normal. I mean, you're definitely nervous about, gosh, there's cameras in your face every time you do anything.
Get out of your car,
right? Which again is not always bad, but unfortunately we all know that it never shows the whole story.
No.
And that's the hard part, right? And it's, you know, again, we want to defend our spouses, and you can't, right? Like, because you're really defending. I truly believe, and my husband said, and I loved hearing this, he goes, in the last 2 weeks I've actually had more people buy me lunch or pay for my coffee, which just shows you it is more, the majority do believe in overall that they're doing a good job, right? And believe in what they're doing. So it's the noisy, silent minority that just is really hard to deal with sometimes.
I don't think people realize that Calgary Police Service has one of the I think it's either one of or the highest ratings in North America, I think, right? And so that is a big deal.
That's a big deal.
That means that the people of Calgary, and not all people, and don't get me wrong, I know we all know that there's officers who behave poorly. We know that. Of course. But we don't need to defend them by defending the good ones, because the good ones don't need a defense, right? Like,
absolutely.
But I could feel the want to defend them, because, you know, they're good people. Like my buddies, I want to defend them every time I get on Facebook and say, hey, like, listen here, I love these guys. These guys are good humans.
Totally.
But all that does is make it worse.
Exactly.
Because by trying to defend good ones, we're actually somehow mediating what happens to the bad ones.
Absolutely.
Somehow, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
We're toning down the impact that their behavior should have, right?
Yes.
And they'll be dealt with. We all know that. Like, they get dealt with, whether it be professional standards, whatever the agency has in terms of internal affairs, and we don't have to worry about that.
Absolutely.
Well, we don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
Right? But I could see why people are worried about it.
And that's kind of where I challenged our group. I said, you know, I want you to get out a piece of paper, and I want you to write down what you can control and what you can't control right now, because I think that sometimes we focus so much on what we can't control, and that's what officers do in general anyways, a lot of the times, right? That let's get back to, like, you know, what we can control. You can you can look at your own house and how your spouse shows up to work, and maybe it's a conversation starter, because I think it's easy for cops. My husband said, you know, it's actually harder for me when people back me. It's easier when guys are just like, oh, you know, stupid pigs or whatever. He goes, yeah, whatever. You know, but when everybody's like, oh, I feel for you guys, he's like, oh, like, you know, it's a weird dynamic almost, right? They're more used to it, but spouses aren't.
Yeah. And
so I said, you know, I think it can be a conversation between family units right now, where spouses are probably feeling it a lot too. And it's easy for cops to be like, oh, we're so used to this or whatever. But that may need to be a conversation, because I think that's an important, like, you know, I appreciate that you're trying to defend me, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I know that what I'm doing is, you know, good and whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I think the climate of policing, it's a ebb and flow. It changes, and there's things that come up, and then all of a sudden the newspaper is running with it. And I think you just kind of have to ride the roller coaster a bit. I mean, that's part of life too, right? It's not all good.
It's so not all good, but you know what? It's so funny because I was telling you earlier, we had a member of the police fraternity on from an agency in North America.
Yeah.
Trying to be really careful. I don't want it because, and so I keep saying the same thing over again, but she just described how when she looks in the mirror and putting the uniform on, because one of her friends sent her a message calling her a bastard, like all the others in uniform, right? And so of course she's like, this is an educated friend, right? An educated person who this person went to school with and like studied and got their degrees together and all this kind of jazz. And she'd always wanted to be a police person, always wanted to be a policewoman. So she finally gets the job. A few years in, this is what's happening. And now her friends are sending her letters and emails saying like, you're a bastard, like why are you putting that uniform on? And so of course I asked her, I said, well, have you not gone to work because of it? And she said, well, no. Why would I not go to work? This is my job. And I was like, yeah, see, that's the difference. That's the difference between a police officer and me, first of all.
Totally.
Is if I get up in the morning and I'm thinking I have to go to some place where everyone's going to hate me, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty simple, right?
I'm not sure I would enjoy that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I said, and other people were telling me I was crazy, that I would absolutely go.
Yeah.
But I said, I don't know if I would.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could put the uniform on and show up knowing, because I have so many friends from all different walks of life that no matter what I did, it would affect them, some of them, right? And that reality was too much for me. And so I give a lot of, well, obviously I know lots of good police, so that's who I'm speaking of. I have no idea what the rest are like, and
of course,
I'm not trying to paint a whole bunch with a brush, because what I've realized through this from myself is some of the biases I had, right? Like, for example, for me to walk downtown at night and take pictures, because I like to take pictures, and night is probably the best time. I feel safe.
Yeah.
I feel safe because not only do I know there's police down there, but I also know some of them, so I feel extra safe, right? But then I had to think about, what about the people who don't know any of them? And maybe the last time they had a dealing with a policeman was somewhere else, even a different city, but a police, and it was bad, right? So they're not going to feel safe where I feel safe. And I had to really look at that in terms of my interactions, but then of course always comes back to us and what we can control. It's funny when you said that, can control, because I used a specific technique with all of the new people I work with who come into recovery. It's because it's the foundation is, what can you control? What can't you control? We're only going to focus on this. And I tell you, you've probably experienced, it's hard to keep people focused on this.
For sure.
Like the mind just gravitates to what we can't control.
Because I think we all like control. We all like having the, well, if I do X, Y, Z, then this happens. Yeah. And I think that's where, anxiety, everything, right? Like stems from it. It's, we all want to have control, but we don't. We don't have there's a whole lot of things we have zero control over. And it's really easy to get caught up. It's easier to focus on those things than it is to be like, okay, well, what can I do at home? How can I monitor my social media, intake and all of that kind of stuff? It's hard. Even talking about moderating social media intake and stuff, like that is such a key, because and whether we like it or not, and some people who are older than us for sure aren't happy about it, but the reality is that's the world. So we can either keep ignoring the fact that this is what we need to do. We need to pay attention to how much time we're on Facebook.
Like, and if people don't understand, just try it, practice. Take a look at Facebook. When you start getting agitated, put it away.
Yeah.
And you'll find out quickly how fast you return to a non-agitated state.
Absolutely.
Right? Once you get away from it.
But you can scroll and keep getting more and more agitated, right?
Exactly.
And I mean, you know, you talk about addictions, and I think media and like the news and the newspaper. I mean, there's so many avenues now. You don't just have to wait till 6 o'clock to read 50 articles.
Yeah.
Like you can go immediately
All
and
day.
read
Yep.
100 of them,
Yeah.
right? And you can, what goes with that too, because I feel like our world is so polarized right now. And you know, at first during COVID, I was like, oh, it's kind of nice not to see politics being all over your Facebook page. And now it's just like, oh, focus on COVID. But then it became, you know, people that weren't wearing the mask, and that, you know, now there's polarization that way, and now
God,
there's polarization that way, right? Like there's so many avenues where we can be like, if you don't believe what I believe, you're wrong and you're a bad person, right? And I think that's what scares me about social media, because that's what I feel like. You can't have a conversation about, you know, even the Black Lives Matter over Facebook.
Yeah.
Like you need that face to face. You need context. You need to be asking people, well, okay, why do you believe that? Or okay, where's your place on this? And you know, you need to be able to have that, but our world isn't like that right now, and it's it's frustrating.
It is frustrating because we're so quick to write people off, right?
Yes.
For a mistake, and I come to this point all the time with this, because God, I thank God people didn't just cut me off after and leave me at 30 and say, that's who you are, that's who you've always been, that's who you always be.
Totally.
Because that is so not true, right? We were Darcy and I were talking about on the way up here, like he doesn't even know me, like from before.
Yeah.
He's never met the drunk me or the partier me or even the promiscuous me. He has no idea about that.
Yeah.
He's known me with one partner.
Yeah.
I don't drink, right? And so that's how he knows me. It's thank God he's been able to get to know me.
Yes.
As opposed to only me being 30 and always having to be 30, and that miserable son of a gun that I was. Like, thank God nobody was able to write me off.
Yourself included,
Well,
right?
exactly.
Like I think there's, you know, being able to look at your younger self and go, oh my gosh, like the growth and the grace that you can give that person because you didn't know enough, or you know, you had a bad experience or whatever. I mean, gosh, that's taken me freaking years to you know, forgive myself for who I was, or just at least go back to that younger self and say, I'm sorry, I didn't believe in you as much, you know, and all of that kind of stuff. So with kids, it's just like, oh man, this is terrifying.
No doubt, hey? Like, I can't even imagine that. I have no kids, but it's like, that's way too much responsibility for me. I have a cat, and I'm absolutely certain I have messed him up.
Yeah.
And,
well, hey, that's what we always say. We're not going to put money aside for their education fund. We'll put it aside for their counseling or their psychologist fund. Because because people are people, and
that's
what
ahead.
you do. I mean, what you do, and I think that's shame is such a huge response for people, and you know, I think policing and all of that kind of stuff. If mistakes are made, or you know, I listened to Anita's story, and like just that, like you hide yourself because of shame and because of fear, because of, you know, all these things. Like, I can't even imagine, and we wonder why, you know, then they're in the news, right? And it's like, man, we need to be better at walking alongside of each other, and like,
love that, walking alongside. So
COVID was an interesting time frame too.
No doubt.
I was actually, to be honest, I was quite concerned about police families during that time. Because I mean, there was rumbling, and there was people that were saying, well, I don't let my husband or my spouse, you know, sleep in the same bed. I don't let them see the kids, like, and I was just like, like, what do you mean? You know, like they need that right now. Like, and it was
Yeah.
slow for them. I
Yeah.
mean, 12 hours during COVID was like, oh, that was.
Well,
that
because
was
there's
hard.
nobody out.
There was nobody out. I mean, you still had the
Domestics went up.
jerks
and-
are still. Actually, my husband said that it wasn't that bad.
Really?
Now let's see. I always wonder if it's the calm before the storm, right?
Yeah.
COVID in general.
Yeah.
People are still trying to figure out what life looks like, whether they've lost their job, all of that kind of stuff. I think the mental health and long-term mental health of the city will play out in the next year.
I think you're right. And I spoke to a dispatcher, and they had said that suicide calls were up. They were the big one. Domestics were like in
About
district,
normal.
probably about normal, which is terrible because normal's not good.
Normal's not good.
No,
Yeah. No.
but yeah, like the suicide calls went up almost overnight, she said.
Wow.
Because like a lot of people just aren't used to isolating,
Oh.
you know, and young people especially aren't used to it. I'm used to it. I'm an alcoholic. So back in my day, I was by myself most of the time.
Totally.
But I mean, now I had a partner, so that was weird.
Yeah, yeah. And being home, right? Like I think
Yeah.
that was a challenge for everybody, right? Like I actually at one point I said to my husband, I said, you know, I'm kind of mad and jealous that you still have your normal.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and
I
I
still
think
had
that
mine
was
too, yeah.
that was a hard thing for police spouses. It was
Yeah.
like there's this new normal, but then there's this fear compiled on this new normal, right? And like
Yeah.
that added a new element, and then you have your kids home all the time. I mean, I choose that, and that was hard. It's hard enough,
Yeah.
right? Like, so people that are not making that choice. So I think that was a real. That time frame was again, geez, 2020, right?
Yeah, and you can see how young people were affected by it because
Oh.
as soon as they lifted some of the restrictions, they were on the beach partying, and
Totally.
and part of me's like, oh, you dumb kids, and the other part of me's like, I'd be doing the same damn thing if I was young again.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
you feel like you're invincible and all of that kind of stuff. But there's also this balance of, you know, the mental health of connection, how important connection is for people
Oh,
that,
yeah.
you know, at what point? Where does this, you know, this, and I swear I was like an emotional roller coaster every day because Graham was exposed anyways. So, but then you're like, okay, but they're saying cohort family, but because we can't, because he goes to work and like, there's these dynamics that every day you were challenged. You know, I think there's going to be good that comes from it. I really hope that I think society is, you know, busy as a status symbol. I know people that run their kids to 500 different activities, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that there was some beauty in families slowing down and
Big time.
spending time together and going like, oh, well, the kids actually are doing really well. They're getting along
Yeah.
for the most part. And, you know, you hope that it forces people, again, that intentionality. I always come back to that because I think it's such an important piece. Like, moving forward, if everything gets lifted, what do we want as a family? And what is important to us? And I think as police families, that's important anyways.
Yeah.
But for everybody, I think I think it could be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you mentioned it earlier too, the intentionality.
Yeah.
And because intentionality just, it hits me as mindfulness, right? So
It is,
and being, I love meditation and I try to do it as much as I can. That mindfulness is always kind of what I want in my activities.
Yeah.
So like you're like you said, as we get back to normal, I've already figured out some things I'm not doing anymore.
Absolutely.
Because I just was doing them automatically, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to I need to do this thing. It was just like happening, you know, and
I think we all live our life so much like that.
exactly.
And again, in the police world, I think it's, you know, it's easy to just not become roommates, but just like, you know, let your days just flow into each other. But then you wonder, like, we've full on told our kids, you are not number one in our life. You know, mom and dad are, you know, for us, it's God and then mom and dad.
Yeah.
But you guys are not, because if we're not okay, it means you guys are not going to be okay.
Yeah.
So like you ask them and they'll be
point.
like, we're not number one. But I think that's such a counter cultural
Yeah.
mentality. I think, you know, kids become your life, and it's like, I think that there needs to be a balance on that.
There's got to be. Whenever someone says, this is my life, it always makes me a little uneasy. Because it's like, well, what happens if you lose that? Or
it's
what
your
happens
identity piece, right? And again, for cops, that's such a huge part of it.
Big part of it. Yeah.
Right? And I think that one of the things that we heard in marriage counseling, which I just thought was so brilliant, was there will always be things that try to come between you and your spouse, whether that's the job, whether that's your kids, whether that's all these things. And you need to decide right now that this is, you will not let anything come in between that. And I think that, it's, for cops, it's very easy to just, I'm a cop, right? Yeah. And I am a cop. And it's like, well, no, you're a dad and you're a brother and you're, all these things, or sister or whatever. And that's an important piece to remember.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I wanted to touch on it as a family. When the member starts to take on the identity way too much, right? When that's all they do. So, because I know it's pretty common for young officers specifically, mostly, I guess, as they're getting into it, because they meet these other people that are like-minded. We're spending lots of time together, but that's all they do.
Yes.
Right. And so, have you experienced that with Graham, or has it been more? He's been more kind of centered.
I would say your first 5 years, again, you're in that honeymoon phase, and you're like. Classes, you don't get an edge in on, like, that's all, they're doing, chokeholds on you because they practiced it right? And they're telling you 10 codes, and their world is that. And part of that is that it's such a, they don't want to mess it up, right? And so that's their focus. But I think that kind of bleeds into the first kind of few years anyways, because there's this excitement, and I can't believe I'm a police officer. I get to bring a gun to work. Like, all of that comes into it. And then I truly believe the guys that hold on to that and carry it throughout, they're also kind of the most cynical, bitter guys, because, everything that everybody else is doing is affecting their day-to-day when it shouldn't be. Because, again, they can't control it. You can't control executive, you can't control the politics and blah blah blah, all of these things. So you can usually see the ones that probably have that identity too much, because they're usually the most cynical. And so I would say, Graham, he was in District 4 for 8 years.
That's a heavy district.
He loved it.
Yeah.
But he even knew that he was starting to, when you're dealing with, that population as much as you are, and you're going to the same calls and you're same people, like you start getting annoyed and probably losing that empathy piece a bit. And so he was very aware, and probably thanks to me, because I always say that I'm the one that has talked his ear off and slowly have kind of built this with him, that he knew he needed to leave. And I think that so many officers, they're so afraid to leave what is the thing they hate about change is change itself, or something like there's that quote, right?
Change in general.
Like they don't like change, but sometimes that's what they need the most. And that's the hardest thing to do, because it's the fear of the unknown again, right? Well, I'm comfortable. Well, comfortable is not necessarily great when you're an officer either, because you can get complacent. All of bad habits, all kinds of stuff, right? Where if you look at every situation and you go, okay, you know what, I'm getting kind of tired of this. I'm not loving work as much as I used to. I think I need to change. I need to change districts. I need to look at a different way, right? But I think that takes so much. You need to know yourself so much, and know that it's okay, that you need to kind of do that. So I don't know. Lots of people, I'm always like, okay, you're at that 5-year mark. It's time to change.
It's a much better way to go when you can determine the change for yourself, versus getting in trouble and having them change you.
Absolutely.
Right? And put you somewhere just to get you out of the way.
Absolutely.
Right? Because we both know the impact of that on the member and their family must be devastating.
Oh, hugely.
When they get too far off the beam, whatever you want to call it, and that's when they get moved or something changes for a negative.
Yes.
I just think there's so much to being having the forethought,
Yes.
right? Like, and that Graham made a good decision. That's obviously a healthy decision
Yeah.
to say, you know what, I think I might be done
Yeah.
in this area.
Yeah.
I should probably go try something different.
I mean, he even went on front counter. He chose
Yeah.
front counter for a while because he was starting to not sleep well. And
Yeah.
so leading up until we went on holidays or something, he was like, you know what? I need to exercise. I need to do this. But again, is that because we've had so many conversations. Like I always say, you know, Graham and I talk a lot about other police situations and families and marriages, and not to gossip, but to learn
Yeah.
and go, okay, what are we noticing? What are we seeing? All of that kind of stuff. It's probably me doing more of the talking. I had to laugh. We had a hot tub this morning, and he's like, it's really nice having you in the mornings, for, you know, having a couple hot tubs, but man, the talking sure increases. but truthfully, that's our, you know, our hot tub has been an incredible way to decompress and turn off TV and all of that kind of stuff, right? Like, so I think that's where it's like you have to find out what works for your family.
And you have to be intentional.
You do.
Yeah,
I think that's huge.
It's enormous. I don't think we could talk about intentionality enough, because if you have intention in what you're doing, you're going to be focused. You're going to be there. You're going to be present.
You also can weed out the things that, you know, does this align with what our goals are as a family, or our, you know, what's important to us? Then no, well, then we can say no to it, right? It's so much of the world is just saying yes to things because we feel obligated, or we feel guilt, or we feel, I mean, so many emotions come into that, right? And family dynamics or whatever. But when you know when you're intentional, it's easy to say yes or no. And that's, for Beyond the Blue in general, that's really what we wanted to create. We've never had a policies and procedures manual. We've never had, you know, and we really wanted to get clear on who we were and what we, what our goals were for the organization. And the number one thing is to build resiliency within police spouses and families.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Through community education and resources. And, you know, Beyond the Blue has grown so much. Like I was saying, there's Canada Beyond the Blue. We're now in a bigger umbrella. And so now we get to feed off of and, you know, share resources with Toronto and Vancouver and Peel, and we get to help each other. It's just like another extension of family.
Yeah.
And I think that it's obviously needed, like especially out east. I mean, they have no peer support. They have no psychologists. They had to do all that work themselves to try to vet all these people. And I'm going, wow, we are incredibly fortunate.
Yeah.
But we still need our families utilizing it. So we kind of bridge that gap, right? Because half the time, whatever our officers get, all the emails they get, it doesn't make it home to us.
Yeah.
Right? They're inundated. They don't, you know. So that's where Beyond the Blue stepped in to kind of go, we need to bridge the gap between psych services and you know, our officers and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, and the family, because the peer support only works with members, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Predominantly.
Yeah,
I know that
absolutely.
John would obviously work with
John
anyone.
has been incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I can't speak highly enough to him as well, that I can, if I get a peer support call that I'm not sure on how to, you know, I can call Stacy or I can call John and they'll help. And so I just am so incredibly grateful for them recognizing the value of Beyond the Blue too. Because I truly believe that we could create, you know, healthier officers by focusing on the families as well.
Yeah.
You can't look at it as like they're not just one unit of just the officer. It is a family unit, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference, like between like for military wives or husbands, for example. Like if you go into wanting to be with someone who's in the military and your expectations are totally unrealistic, those marriages don't last very long either, right?
No.
Because the military, by the sounds of it, the military is very similar,
Yes.
right? You not only is it like internally focused, where you have way more credibility if you're part of the internal
absolutely.
machine, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be family or member or of sworn or civilian, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, you know, to have that internal piece.
Yeah.
Like the chaplaincy program, for example. Do I think it's perfect? No, I don't. But I think that if it keeps going, it will evolve into something that is much different maybe than it looks now, but better, more effective.
I agree. I was sad when they removed the chaplaincy program, because I think there's just such value in that. And when I spoke to Miriam, and I was just like, why have I not reached out to you guys as a resource sooner? Because all of you have incredible, like, you know, things that you do and speak to. So, you know, one of the things that I talked to her about is like, I want to access those and bring in more resources and workshops and stuff with the chaplaincy program. Because again, I think it's just another layer. I mean, as much as I love that we have psych services and all of these other things, they're also incredibly busy.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to be reactive. I want as Beyond the Blue to be a proactive resource for families to go, here are some people that are doing amazing things. We're going to bring them in and we're going to learn something. And like I said, tools for your toolbox of maybe this doesn't impact me right now.
Yeah.
But if it does, then I can remember, I can pull from that. It's not, then you're not doing it reactively.
And we're doing that at the end of the year, aren't we?
Yes.
Some of us are presenting to your...
I think so. Well, I definitely talked to Miriam and said, there's things that I want to...
She asked us, and I think I'm presenting on addiction.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Oh, well, there you go.
I didn't realize the two were the same until you're talking. I'm like, I think we're going to be doing that at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Or the new year. I can't remember.
So, I mean, I know that there's people out there doing incredible things, and so I want to start tapping into those.
That's so
because
cool.
I think, again, we don't need to look at them as the be-all, end-all. There is, you know, it's like, it always drove me crazy. I was a personal trainer for a long time, and you'd go to the chiro and you'd say, okay, like, how can I help this client? And they'd be like, well, you know, like, I can only help them kind of thing. It's that mentality. And it's like, I think that's like a very, it's silly, right? We all have a place and a purpose, and we can.
Well, some people aren't going to go to a psychologist.
They're not.
Some people aren't going to go to a chaplain. Some people aren't going to go to peer support, right? What's up? I wanted him to smile again so I could see his teeth.
I know. Yes.
Because all my front ones on the top are all fake. So.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I see a kid with no teeth, I'm like, I like that.
I know that. Yeah, I know that look.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm really excited. Like I said, we had a strategy meeting with our team. We're looking to grow because there's only 4 of us, and we're all volunteer, which it has been an incredible journey, and I'm super excited about where we're at right now and the vision that we have for the future. And I think it's just gonna grow and we're gonna be able to help more families. And that's ultimately our goal, is to do
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, no, not at all.
That was fantastic. How long did we go, Darcy?
Hour 20.
Oh, okay.
Oh, holy moly.
I lost track
Sorry.
of that. No, are you kidding me? We can go 2-3 hours if we need to.
4.
I don't know about these guys, though. I don't know if they'll be able to handle 3 more hours.
Yeah, exactly.
You could handle it.
They're good kids.
He's got his weekend mood shirt on. He's good.
I know, totally. His dab.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
If there's ever, do you guys have anything coming up in terms of fundraisers, or how do people contact you?
We have our email is info@calgarybeyondtheblue.com.
Okay.
That's just our general one. And then our Facebook site is, not our Facebook. Our Facebook is members only. We really look at confidentiality and a secure place. But calgarybeyondtheblue.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you're out there, like, just so everyone knows who listens, if you're not a member, like a family of a sworn or civilian member,
just sworn at this time. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're not, then obviously Beyond the Blue is probably not for you. However, you might know someone who's a family member of a active sworn member, then you can absolutely reach out and ask for information.
Absolutely.
Right on.
And we will be looking at fundraisers and donations and sponsorships and all of that kind of stuff so that we can better serve our.
Because you're trying to become a charity, right?
Yes.
You're in the process.
Yes, we're in the process. Yeah. So hopefully by January we'll be a charity status.
Excellent. Did you file your papers already and everything?
We filed everything. We're just now waiting. Yeah.
I think it took us a year and a half.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it can take up to 3 years, I guess.
Holy moly.
Depending. You have an existing program, though,
yeah.
So I don't think it's going to be that long.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah.
But
ours was.
We'll wait as long as we need to.
I know, right? What's a year and a half?
We exactly.
Waited, and once it's done, it gets a problematic thing out of the way.
Absolutely.
Because I know like lots of people who donate and want to donate because there's so many people looking for good things to donate to. They don't want necessarily, but a receipt is nice to have for tax time.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So,
it's huge, right? Yeah. Your ability to look at kind of bigger donations and not just like $50 here.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? Like.
After I said that, I just realized we just had a donor who's like totally not interested in that. He wouldn't have cared what it was really, but. It's nice to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was checking out your website too. It's awesome. And
thank you.
It's incredible what you're doing and how you're giving back. And
it's
that peer kind of,
You know what's super, like, it's beyond my control. So all of this is beyond my control because, like, somehow I've been like partnered up with a bunch of volunteers who are just absolutely willing to do stuff volunteer.
Isn't it incredible?
It's probably like yourself. Like that is. It is such a, because they're kind of like when I was starting off.
Yeah.
Because I would have done it all for free too. Right.
Totally.
And I still would do it all for free if I could afford to live. Right?
Exactly. I always say, I do a lot of great work for no money.
Yeah.
Thank you, Graham, for allowing me to do that.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's because of people who donate that allow us to continue to do the work and to gather other wicked people who have so much to offer in different directions.
Absolutely.
Of the same work.
Yeah.
Right? So what an incredible thing.
You should check out Dr. Jody Carrington right now too. Okay. She's got like she really works with teachers, but her whole focus is trauma. She loves talking about trauma and all of that kind of stuff, PTSD and OSI, but she has a whole Hello Heroes course right now, and like for first responders and their families, and so we brought her in.
Dr. who?
Dr. Jody Carrington.
Jody Carrington, and the program was?
Hello Heroes.
Hello Heroes, okay.
Yeah, and she does a lot with educators and stuff too, but she worked with an RCMP kind of detachment for a long time with trauma and all of that kind of stuff, so she's got some credibility that way. We brought her in during COVID, and people know who she is. She's hilarious. She swears like she's hilarious and speaks really well to that the first responder world. So she was a hit. We brought her in, which was great. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm encouraged. I want to look up her stuff.
Yeah.
Because as we start this, we're going to be doing that PTSD podcast.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
And that's the cool thing about that is that it's going to be first responders talking to first responders, right? And veterans talking to veterans. And to me, in my mind, there's nothing better. Peer support is such an important part.
It's such a big part that I think is kind of like the education on that is lacking. We need to focus on that more. Yeah. Like during classes or something, right? Like.
But you're like when we're talking about classes and going back to classes and teaching, they need to stop making it 6 months and make it a year. Teach the recruits ethics, like because what I understand is they get like an hour. Maybe an hour and maybe 2 hours of ethics throughout 6 months. Yeah. Now don't quote me on that because I've never been through it, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
And even less on some other things that are probably pretty important to policing. Yeah. Like marginalized populations. You don't learn a whole lot about that. Yeah. Right. And what goes into, like, I don't believe that like the majority of people who go through the police training, wherever they go through it, they don't get enough on marginalized, and which is, in my mind, is a big oversight because that is 90% of the people you're dealing with.
Absolutely, and
if not maybe more than that.
Absolutely, and I think even like populations, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you go up to District 4 and you're, you know, the Sudanese culture, you're
Precisely.
dealing with them, right? So
Yeah.
what does that mean? What does that look like in their culture, how they treat police and then how to do that, right?
Exactly.
And you know, the First Nations and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, because it is tricky, right? Like when you do deal with them on a day-to-day basis, it's like, are you...
Yeah.
Do I call that racist, or could it be done better? And I think that's what needs to be looked at.
Totally. And
right?
you know what I think? It would blow people wide open just simply saying, let's just try to learn some empathy.
Yep.
Let's teach these officers empathy. Because if they don't have it, we can probably teach some of it, right? And because I know, and I get it, there's, like we were talking about before, we don't want to make officers vulnerable in the middle of their shift to like an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
I get we're trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be better to control the breakdown a little bit and be there when it happens? Like if it's going to happen halfway through a shift, like wouldn't it be okay if that member felt good enough to talk to their buddy and say, you know what, I kind of need some time away here.
Yeah.
Like, is there something that we can do? Can we talk to the sergeant? But I know that until we get to that point where those conversations are easy,
Totally.
it's hard.
You're gonna always struggle,
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different world
It is.
right now. And again, the talk and all of the conversations are good. Right? Whether that's mental health.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while to break down, right?
Yeah.
Break down those barriers,
Yeah.
break down the, you know, for a while everybody called Dr. Bonkers, right? The fact that they called, right? That it just shows you that there's still, and I mean that's dark humor. That's part of cop
totally.
world as well.
Yeah.
But I
also
think there's
there
an
was
element
some,
of that you know just speaks to where it needs to change to.
Exactly, because even if though it's a joke, and we all know it's a joke, Dr. Bonkers, ha ha ha, when new recruits hear that, they're not going to Dr. Bonkers. Nobody wants to be labeled bonkers, right?
Totally.
So it's a great joke until it's not a joke.
Until that person
Yeah.
needs and they hesitate.
That's right.
Because they've been, you know.
Because it's been inundated around them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That if you go there, people are going to know you're crazy, your career's over.
Exactly.
Because I've heard all that stuff. Like, if you talk to anyone about your emotions and how you're feeling, your career's over. They're going to tell everybody. You're going to be, and it's like, and I sit there and I listen to these conversations. Where are you getting this information from, first of all? Because that's not true.
Not
like,
true.
That is not true. You could go to anyone that has a confidentiality clause. We won't tell anybody anything.
Exactly.
Because first of all, not only do I like my job, right? I appreciate people's like privacy, very much so.
Yeah.
And in terms of that kind of stuff, I just think like you're off base.
Yeah.
Because those of us in a position to talk about other people's like internal lives, we don't want to.
Absolutely.
Right? We don't want to.
No.
Because we know that's not helpful.
And I think training for sergeants and choosing, you know, I mean, you see it everywhere. There's good leaders and bad leaders, but I can tell you Graham's had some phenomenal leaders and that their team in general is a tight unit and they can call on each other and be like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But that's not, and I know that's not realistic everywhere, or that's not happening
everywhere. It's not
everywhere.
the norm everywhere, yeah.
Right? And so, you know, the promotional process and, I mean, all of that. I mean, there's so many changes that could be.
Yeah.
And I think the chief is looking at some of that, and
I hope
whether
he looks at the promotional.
I know we're gonna go down that road in January. So
oh, are you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
So that's the next. He has to run for the CPA and go for promotional process in the next kind of short amount of time. So
you can always tell when the members are going for promotion.
Oh yeah.
Because they're miserable. Like anxious.
And the amount of time they put in outside of work is
getting
crazy.
their packages ready is just it's insane the amount of work that goes into it.
Yeah.
Not to mention, like if you just talk about the amount of work about the promotional process, that needs to change.
For sure.
But we're going to talk like we get down to the business of the promotional process.
Who they're
in
actually
general.
looking at and what you know and what does
it's
a
a
leader
little shady.
What does a leader look like and who should be in those positions and
sometimes it looks a little shady to an outsider, right? Like and the reason I say that is because I probably don't know all the details. I admittedly don't. I'm quite ignorant. but it does look pretty shady.
Yeah.
Especially when you hear people talking about it. You know, when they're going through it and they're like, yeah, you know what, like most of us know we don't have a chance. It's these two guys that we know they're going to get it. Like, and that's kind of the talk from
And
even
that's
the
a lot of
people,
work to go through to
right?
potentially, know that you're not going to get it, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a lot of people that would be incredible leaders that don't want to go down that route because they don't, like, they're like, no, I'm not doing, like, I'm not going to do that, right? When you're like, no, you would be an incredible leader, right?
I know. It's like we had a young lady on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I said, do you have any plans on like running for office, because we need people to make change, and that's where the change is made.
Yeah.
The change isn't made, like, we're not really mad at the police.
No.
We're mad at the rules that are in place, and of course those officers that are assholes that make it look awful.
Yeah.
Right? That's who we're mad at. So let's just be sure we're mad at the right people.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm more mad at the government, municipal, provincial, federal, as opposed to how they drop the ball, because that teaches every other level of service from those branches of government. It teaches them how to act, right? And so, like, when our prime minister takes a knee like a tool that he is, thinking that he's doing something good, when really everybody wants to see him get off his knees and go to work. What we want, you can change this
condoning
stuff.
bad behavior, right?
Yeah, you can change this stuff.
Yeah.
Why are you lazy?
Yeah.
Like, I'll take a knee. Let me take a knee with my fellow human beings here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you go to your office and maybe change a law or two.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's baffling.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the same idea with promotion. Like, my friend Dominic, he's a staff sergeant. And like, I'm always asking him, like, are you going to go for inspector? And I kind of ask him now to put the knife in a little bit, because I know how hard it is.
Yeah.
But he's like, he never really answers me anymore, because he's like, I just don't know. Like, it's such a confusing process.
I'm not sure it's worth it, right?
Precisely.
Like when you start weighing the cost benefit, right? Like the pros and cons. Like, okay, I'm going to be doing more work. You know, like all of that comes into play,
and
right?
it means less time with family, with kids. Right?
Exactly. And you know, I'm very fortunate. Graham is, he doesn't make any decisions without us having a conversation. This is what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
I go, okay, I know I'm going to be probably with the kids more by myself or whatever. Like, but that's a choice we make. And again, that's the teamwork, right?
That's
like
an essential
we call ourselves Team Ernst. Like, Team Ernst does this, Team Ernst doesn't do this. And that's the language we use with our kids, because they need to know that, like, mom and dad, like, we make the choices together, and we do things, you know. But that is everywhere. Like, he's not going to go for promotion if it means I'm losing my mind at home. Yeah. He won't do it.
Especially if the promotional process is that stressful.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you've already got enough going on at home.
Exactly.
Because you know he's bringing that home.
Yeah.
Can't help but not, right? Like,
of course.
It's like walking around with an extra piece of luggage on your back, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Yeah.
So how did you guys meet then? Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Totally.
Okay.
That's
never
cool.
mind.
No, how do we meet?
Yeah.
How do we meet?
Heather's event.
Yeah, that's right. So my partner had she put on an arts festival, Indigenous arts festival, because she's Indigenous, she's Métis, and so she put this all together, a bunch of artists. Darcy was the guy who came in to do the panel. What were you guys doing a panel on?
Just Indigenous art.
Okay.
General, and art, like how Indigenous artists kind of live and get noticed.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was a really cool festival.
Yeah.
So then after the festival was over, I think it might have been a month later or something like that. Month or two later, I was talking to Heather about starting a podcast.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I need, because I had no idea. Like,
no clue.
I was very late to the podcast train.
Yeah.
So she goes, well, why don't I just connect you with Darcy and we'll go from there. That was 2 years ago.
I was going to say, you have a lot, like, how often are you putting out podcasts?
We try to put at least one a week.
That's
amazing. We're gonna try to get yours in between.
Okay.
So where we might stagger it, so it might be a couple weeks out.
Hey, that's fun.
Because we have this weekend we've got the member from another agency coming on, and then next weekend we have a representative of I can't remember the name of the organization.
Yep.
Then the week after that, I think we'll have you on the weekend.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because we're trying to do some special ones, especially because of the time right now.
Yeah.
And we were trying to get these messages out to other people who are probably experiencing much the same.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like maybe some residual hate, right?
Yeah.
Like out there. And so anyway, we're just trying to do that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
we had no
very
idea.
cool.
We have how many episodes? 105 recorded? Something like that?
In 2 years, that's incredible.
Yeah, and we're coming up on our 3rd year beginning. So
Well, and like, I love stories. I love all of that kind of stuff. So podcasts play really. I love podcasts. I listen to
Me
them all
too.
the time. I
Yeah.
go for walks. I listen to podcasts. So, I love the idea of it. And so today on my way out here, I'm like, man, that should be a goal of Beyond the Blue, is have a podcast, right? Whether it's like once a month to begin with, right? Like, and you bring on guests and stories and how families get through hard times and like all of that. I'm like, man, that would be amazing.
well, you now know a producer who absolutely is mobile.
Yeah, that's
And he doesn't have to bring me along. You can do your own podcast and like absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, that's exciting.
Totally. I think it's a great way to share information.
Yeah.
I love the long form of it.
Yes.
That there's no timeline, like time, you have to end here. I like it. I mean, obviously it's different depending on who's talking.
Yeah.
Like, but, because some people were like 45 minutes, right? We have like maybe 2 of those where they were just like, once they were done, I could tell they were done.
They were done.
It was like, they're just staring at me and I'm like, okay, we'll just
Yeah,
finish there.
exactly. And we're done. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you inviting us into your home.
Oh my goodness, I'm
Like-
so grateful you guys came out here, and
This was amazing.
I'll take you for a golf cart ride if you want to go see the rest of the resort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go for a golf cart ride.
I know. It's hilarious out
Yeah.
here. It's like, we always joke that my in-laws, they go on a boat ride every night and kind of just go putter, and we go on our golf cart ride.
Yeah.
Like, we put the kids to bed and we go on a golf cart ride. Like,
That's
it's funny.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It reminded me of we were driving around because when we pulled in behind you over here,
Yeah.
there was like a jacked up one behind
Oh
us.
gosh, yeah.
It
You'll
was
see.
all raised.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Big tires, like yeah.
And it
it's-
reminded me of Palm Springs. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't.
Oh my goodness, because it's a golf cart community after golf cart community.
Absolutely.
So they have a golf cart lane on the roads.
Oh my gosh, I
So-
didn't know that.
I know. Some of the roads have it. So you could, as you're driving down, I saw this one that had like, it was like a lowrider with
Oh,
spinners.
totally. Yeah.
Had spinners on it and everything. It was like, it must have been a $10,000 golf cart, probably.
Easily.
if
Like
not
some of
more.
them out here are,
Yeah.
you can tell, are the fancy, like,
Yeah.
people have done a lot of work to them.
I love the idea of a golf cart community because it reminds me of like just slow.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's what we love out here. It really is like a great thing for, especially for my husband,
Yeah.
to just like, he comes out here and you can just see his body just kind of, because
Yeah.
I mean, with CPA and being a constable, like you
Where is he now?
see both. He's in 6th District.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, this is a place of
Yeah.
escape for us, right?
That's so
and
good.
I mean, the kids. I don't want to say we don't have to parent our kids out here, but they definitely have freedom that they don't
Mm-hmm.
have in the city.
The way we probably did when we were kids.
100%.
Yeah.
And my husband grew up on a ranch, right? And so,
Oh,
I mean, he
okay.
was riding snowmobiles at 8 and like, and I like the stories I hear, I'm like, okay,
He was
I'm
probably
not
driving
sure.
a truck at 10.
Totally.
Yeah.
With his brothers in the back to his aunts, right? Like,
Yeah, and they were drunk.
terrifying, right? Like,
Yeah.
but out here, like, the kids have freedom and
Yeah.
we're in the city, and I appreciate my husband for that, because obviously police officers in general can be a little bit more non-trusting of everybody.
Yeah.
And Graham always talks about how he has to go against that because he knows the value in what that does to kids' self-confidence and their self-esteem, to be able to like go out in the world and just try things and explore.
Yeah.
And that's hard for police officers to do,
Yeah.
to allow that to happen.
I can
right?
only imagine.
Yeah.
That
from what they see.
hypervigilance bleeds everywhere, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Thank you so much.
oh my goodness, it's been great.
This is awesome. Tara, appreciate you and wish you nothing but luck with Beyond the Blue.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. And
you're
us
welcome.
too. And we look forward to having you guys out
Oh.
to our events and stuff.
Totally.
That'll
You
be
know what?
great.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
See,
exactly.
At first I was like, I don't know, I got to do a presentation. Like, are there going to be a bunch of stuffed shirts and, you know,
Definitely not.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Because we're all human, man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for tuning in this week to the Voices in Recovery podcast. Please stay tuned every Wednesday as we air another episode. Thank you for your time. And please, if you're in trouble, reach out. If you need to contact us at www.freedomspathrecoverysociety.ca, or you can look for us on Facebook under Freedom's Path Recovery Society. Thank you again for tuning in. Please stay tuned for upcoming groups, activities, and podcasts.